So someone asked me recently, and people have been asking me throughout the months and years, like, how do you know when you're good enough to translate professionally, I guess, for money? And I honestly don't know. Sometimes I ask myself that question, like, am I actually good enough to translate? The quick answer is that's not for you to decide. That is for the people who are going to hire you or not to decide. I just wanted to tell a few stories about the times that I have applied for jobs and either failed or successfully got the jobs. When it first started occurring to me, like, hey, I could actually be doing this like as my primary source of income and actually live nicely off of translating. This was in the mid-zeros. I had just graduated college and I was like, well, shit, now what do I do? I remember one day just like finding all the contact information of various anime companies that existed back in the day and just kind of sending them unsolicited, like, hey, I'm a translator, here's my resume, I want to work for you. And most of them didn't even write back, understandably. And like one or two actually wrote back and they're like, oh yeah, we're not looking for translators at the moment, but like we'll put your information on file. The first company that I started working for, it was Discotheque Media, and actually I was translating for them before they even became Discotheque Media. So I kind of lucked out with them in the sense that like they already knew me before they were even a company, so it was really easy for me to just continue working for them. And that was in the mid-zeros. But after them, I didn't really get official, legit, licensed work translating Japanese until about 2013. So here's a fun story. In the summer of 2013, I was on pros.com, and actually a company, like one of the big companies that creates ultimate games, contacted me. And they're like, hey, we're looking for translators, so like, would you please take our test to see if you qualify to be our translator? And I was like, yes! Awesome! And so I took the test and I was extremely meticulous and very careful in how I translated everything, and I like looked over it a million times afterwards to see if it read well, and they didn't really give me much criteria for what they wanted out of the translation, so I was like, okay, well, I'll just provide what I feel personally in my aesthetic is the best translation. And then I heard back from them, they're like, well, no, you failed our test, we're not going to hire you, goodbye, basically. And I was like, okay. I'm sorry to hear that. Like, could you please let me know, like, what I could have done? Like, it's always good to ask for feedback, like, just for future reference, you know, just so you can learn. But I didn't even hear anything back from them, like, how I could have, like, what they were looking for, what I could have done differently in the translation to make them hire me. So I didn't know. Fast forward to 1 month after that, just 1 month after that, and I see on pros.com a posting by the company for whom I work now, which is basically a middleman company, and they were saying, hey, we're hiring translators. And I was about to send them a message, but then I noticed, oh, they already sent me a message asking me again, will you take this test, you know, to see if you qualify for us. And they were a little more specific with what they wanted. They're like, well, we like our translations very localized. We want it to sound like it was originally written in American English and not like, you know, a translation of something. So I'm like, okay, well, there's a clue at least. And I did their test, and I passed their test with flying colors. They're like, oh yeah, you're one of the top scorers of our test, so you don't even need training. You know, we'll put you to work right away. So guess what the first job they gave me to translate was? It was an ultimate game by the very company that rejected me 1 month earlier. So I guess the moral of that story is that sometimes people will not hire you for just very arbitrary reasons. Sometimes it's illogical, sometimes it's irrational, and sometimes you have no idea why it's happening. So the best you can do is to just keep trying and keep applying and keep putting yourself out there. And whenever you can get feedback, but sometimes the feedback is somewhat meaningless. Now, in their defense, the defense of the company that didn't hire me directly but then hired me through this other company. The middleman company, the one that wound up hiring me, I'm sure they pay me less than what the original company would have paid me directly. And then the company that hired me, the middleman company, they have like in-house editors and people. So it goes through them for quality check before it goes on to the final client. So there is that. But this same company, it gets so confusing when I'm not using company names, and I'm really sorry I can't use the company names in this. So let's just call them the company in Japan that develops Ultimate games that wouldn't hire me directly. We'll call them Bob. And then the middleman company for whom I now work, and then I get work through them, we'll call them Sandy. All right, so Bob, they wouldn't hire me originally, but they would hire me through Sandy, and I've been working for Bob through Sandy for the past 3 years almost. So Bob, actually about half a year to a year ago, like they sent me like through Sandy, but they sent a personal message to me like congratulating me and thanking me for what was some of the best translations they've ever had. And they said, oh, we got so much positive fan feedback. Like the fans are saying, oh, this is like the best translations they've ever seen from this company. And I was like, and you're the same people who wouldn't hire me and didn't tell me why. So that's my story with Bob and Sandy. It sounds like I'm talking about ex-lovers or something. So I have an extremely similar story to that, so I won't get too much into detail. But yeah, there was an anime company that I kind of sent my information to. They actually said on their website they were looking for translators, so it wasn't completely unsolicited. Like, they said they needed translators, so I applied, and I applied through the official channels. I sent the resume, cover letter, etc. Didn't even hear back from them. And then about a year after that, through Sandy, I wind up translating an anime series for them, so happened twice. And then there's another company, I'm gonna call them Miranda. So this other company, Miranda, I applied for them because I saw on their website that they had openings for translators and editors. And so I applied through the official channels for Miranda, and I heard back from them. They said, yeah, take our test. And the really cool thing about Miranda is they gave me a lot of information about what it was specifically they were looking for. And they gave me multiple tests too. They gave me like 4 different kinds of things to translate. Like they gave me manga, they gave me a non-scripted interview with Japanese people, they gave me anime. I had a bunch of other things that I could translate to just so that they could kind of see like, well, what genres am I better at? What mediums am I better at? And when I took all of the tests, they actually gave me like pretty detailed feedback from all the tests. Like I'd passed a couple, I'd failed a couple, and they gave me like detailed feedback about all of them, explaining like what I did that they didn't like. And then the cool thing is Miranda gave me a chance afterwards to like do it again and show that I had taken their feedback and learned from it. And I'm super, super appreciative of Miranda for doing this, because I feel like too often translating is so subjective, and every firm wants something different. They want some kind of different style, and they just seem to assume that we can read their minds and know what they want, or they just assume, I feel like, they think that anyone who doesn't do their style is just wrong, which is wrong. That's a wrong way of thinking. Translating is subjective. It's okay to have different styles. But I really appreciated that Miranda was upfront with what they wanted and then explained the things that I did that they didn't like and what I should do to improve upon them. So it's like I had a chance to redeem myself, and I did, and I wound up working for Miranda. And now here's another story about my first and only time that I ever did an interpreting job. So I think I've mentioned here and there in videos that I have done interpreting once, and it's through this agency that hooks up people who need interpreters. And apparently there aren't very many in the Sacramento area, so they call me like once every 1 to 2 months or so, offering work, and I always decline, because the first time I did the job, I felt like, well, I don't think I'm good enough for this, but what the hell, I'm gonna try it. And they kind of encouraged me too, because I told them like, well, I've never interpreted, and it was for a medical thing too. And she said, well, it should be pretty simple. It's just a doctor's visit. This lady was in a car accident and she needs an interpreter there to make sure that all the correct information is taken down for her case, because she was going to sue the person who hit her. And that should have already been a clue to me to not take the job, because if it's something like really official like that, I don't want to risk giving any misinformation if this is a legal thing. But I needed money and I'd never done interpreting before, so again, I was like, okay, what the hell, I'm gonna try it. And I did, and I mean, I'm glad I tried it because I have a story to tell and because now I know not to do it again. But yeah, I went there, and first thing, I don't really like dealing with people, especially strangers. I suck at like being polite and having proper social graces and etiquette. It just feels fake to me, and I just suck at it. I kind of freeze up in those sorts of things. And then I also feel weird like dressing up in a businessy way. I always feel like I'm either overdressed or just that I'm pretentious somehow if I'm dressed like professionally. I don't know, it just feels weird to me. And so there was that discomfort. And then there was just the uncertainty of sitting around in the waiting area and like wondering, oh, when is she gonna show up? Who is she? How will I even know who she is? And there was an awkward moment of having to introduce myself, like, oh wait, yeah, I think I'm your interpreter. And then the actual session with the doctor, so you had the doctor and her, and then they had this like official stenographer type person like sitting there, like taking notes of everything. I just felt like I didn't need to be there because this lady, she understood English okay. Like whenever the doctor asked her questions, like, does this hurt? She would always respond no or yes before I even had a chance to translate. Like, itai desu ka? Like she just do it. But because of the nature of the case, I was still required to translate, and then I was also required to translate what she said, what the lady's response was, even if she responded in English, and that felt really stupid. And then I also felt really dumb because there were some words I just plain didn't know, and it's like I never had encountered medical vocabulary before in Japanese. And one time, like, the doctor was asking her, have you had an MRI? And I was about to like look it up in my Japanese English dictionary because I don't know what MRI is in Japanese. Well, I do now. It's MRI, but I didn't know that. And so like I was just about to look it up, and the lady, you know, the one who's filing the lawsuit, the Japanese lady, she was like, oh, like, yes, I had an MRI. It's like she could answer it anyway. I felt really embarrassed, and like I really didn't even need to be there. And like people are probably rolling their eyes at me and going like, God, who does this lady think she is? Like, she's an interpreter, she sucks. After the fact, the Japanese lady, the client, like, she seemed very appreciative and she thanked me a bunch, and like she apparently thought I did a good job. I don't know, maybe I did do a good job. Maybe I'm only remembering the moments that I flubbed and I'm fixating on those, but like to me, I felt like I did a shitty job and that I should not have even been paid for that. But I got paid for it, and the agency continues to send me potential jobs, so maybe I did better than I thought I did. So the point of that story is, even if you think you did a shitty job, even if you think you're gonna be horrible at it, maybe you're not. Maybe you're just being your worst critic and you're actually not as bad as you think you are. And I guess the big point of this is, it doesn't even matter if you're good enough to translate if you don't apply yourself, if you don't put yourself out there and try to get the jobs. So put yourself out there and try to get the jobs. And if you're lucky enough to get something, do it. And if you enjoy it, keep doing it. And if it doesn't happen, then do something else. Bye!